to this Tuesday edition of Houston Life. I'm Derek Shore, along with the lovely Sharon Melton.
Oh,
Hi,
you
Sharon.
are so kind. Thank you so much, Derek. It's good to be here, everyone. And we have a lot in store for you today, from dealing with your sinuses to sculpting your body to decorating your front porch, all for fall. And we've got that and more to cover. But first, in the wake of the tragic mass shooting in Las Vegas, you may be wondering just how to talk to your kids about this really unique tragedy.
A lot of people have been wondering that, in fact. And joining us now with what you need to know before tackling this issue for yourself and for your family is Dr. Shana Lewis with Living Well Professional Counseling Services. Dr. Lewis, thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
So, horrible news. I mean, I think a lot of us are still just reeling from what happened yesterday in Las Vegas. And for a lot of young people out there, we're seeing these images over and over, and the sound of those gunshots.
Too much.
Where do you start if you have children in the home?
Cut off the news. They can't take it. I mean, as grown-ups, we feel the anxiety that comes on when you hear that and see that. And it replays over and over again. Children can't have exposure to that because they can't handle it.
But once you turn off the television, where do you start? Especially when it becomes the age of the child. You have children who are very, very young, but teenagers, so you can't stop them from looking at social media to learn about it. So where do you start?
That's true. Well, the first thing is be clear about what the signs and symptoms are of children who may have experienced a trauma. Now, just like just happened with Hurricane Harvey, whether it happened directly to us or we watched it happen, it's still traumatizing. So children may be more clingy, they may be more sad, they may even have some behavior issues that may show up as a result of it. And parents have to be clear that those things are normal reactions to them being traumatized or suffering from some kind of anxiety.
What about the younger children? I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because teenagers will learn from social media, but let's say young kids just going to school, they're going to hear about this at school. So how can you equip your child to be able to process what happened without causing some psychological damage?
True. So the most important thing that parents can do is listen to your children and ask them, what do they know? So I did this yesterday with my own two children, they're 8 and 10. I asked them, so tell me, what do you know? Because my son mentioned it, and my daughter said, what was that? And so I said, tell me what you've heard. So they tell you. And then I asked, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about that? And then we have a dialogue about that. So hear from your children what they know and answer their questions honestly, because we can not want to answer it all the way because it's very horrific, but give them age-appropriate answers based on their level of understanding.
What happens if they become angry or start acting out? What is the step that a parent can take or an adult or a guardian can take to help them that way?
Sure. It's important to help install some coping mechanisms for children. Creating security and normalcy is a part of that. So perhaps if you have faith, you can add faith into it. Perhaps if they have a favorite toy, there's a blanket, things that are self-soothing, playing soft music, things like that can help calm their systems down. They get highly agitated because of all that's going on.
A lot of people may avoid uncomfortable topics in general. And we've talked about this so much. I mean, the parents who think that if they don't talk to their kids about drugs, they won't do drugs. What about in this case where if parents just assume that it didn't happen, let's pretend it didn't happen. That's also not a great approach, right?
It's not, because it happened. And like you just said, they go to school with other children who saw it, and they always talk about things that occur at home that your children may not have been exposed to in your home, but they were. So ask the questions. When you ask, how was your day at school? What did you and your friends talk about? Let's ask some specific questions about some things, perhaps, as opposed to pretending nothing happened and acting as if they can just go on without dealing with any of this stuff. They have to deal with it, because to not deal with it makes them feel worse and less empowered.
Now, question for you, though, what about their friends? Because their friends, as we mentioned, are going to be bringing this up. And then they're going to be bringing those questions to their parents once again. How do you deal with trying not to distance those kids from their friends or another parental unit out there who may be talking about it without alienating their child at the same time?
Well, you can't, because we live in a world where we're amongst other people. I think one of the most important things as parents are models, so we can model to our children how we are to respond, so they look to us. So if we're running around, all anxious about everything and upset, then they're going to do the same thing. But if we do get upset, that's human, right? And so letting them know that it's okay if we get upset, but we'll be better, but we're going to talk about it. And so you can't shield them from that. We just have to address it as it shows up.
And I love the fact that, of course, with this particular, sadly, with this situation, we've been through a number here in Houston.
We have.
And so a lot of these same techniques that we're using for what happened yesterday in Vegas, we can apply those still to the recovery we're having now because of Harvey.
Yes, exactly the same. And our kids may need it even more because now they've had a double dose of seeing some things that are traumatic.
What if they've moved over to the part where they're now shell-shocked still?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Do you need to take a child to see a psychiatrist at this point? Or how do you deal with it, especially if a parent can't figure it out themselves what to do?
Absolutely. So when you see that a child is having struggles in regular behavior or school, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, things that they normally would do are now being affected, then you may need to seek some professional help. A week or so afterwards, we would give that amount of time for things to kind of normalize. But if they don't, then seek some professional help. You don't want it to become a greater problem that interferes in a huge way and you have more consequences as a result.
What about children, Dr. Lewis, who are just flat out afraid to leave the house?
Yes.
That maybe they're experiencing more anxiety leaving the house to go to school every day even.
Exactly. So things that they normally are afraid of, they may be more afraid of. The dark, being alone, things like that. So those are the children that you need to give extra time to. So don't say, oh, we'll get over it. Don't do that. We need to talk to them. Tell me, what are you thinking? I'm big about talk to your kids. Don't just shush them. Talk to them. What are you thinking? And spend that extra time. If that means it's a little bit more one-on-one time with mommy or daddy, then do that because that's important. That's what builds their safety and returns them to a normal space. The other thing that I like with kids, because there's lots of worry and anxiety, I have children make worry boxes. The things that we can't control. So this happened. Can we control it? No, it's already occurred. Create a worry box. It's a shoe box. You decorate it. You cut a hole in the top. You write your worries and you drop them in because you can't do anything about them, but you let the worry box deal with it.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah. Now, what about if you see a child who, yes, you've been talking to them, you see that they're progressing nicely, but then you realize something's going on. What kind of signs should a parent really be looking for? Could it be possibly overeating or undereating or things like that? What should they still be looking for even if you've had all these conversations?
So here's the thing. If your child is not sleeping, they're waking up at night with nightmares. So the kid that comes to you at 2 o'clock in the morning crying, they may not even be able to verbalize, okay, I just woke up, something just happened. They don't know. That's a concern. If they're not eating is another concern. If they're not doing the things they would normally do, those are all concerns. If they become aggressive, that's a concern. Because kids don't have words for this. If they're really young, perhaps, they don't know what's wrong. They just act out. So as parents, we have to pay attention to that very closely. So know your children. I think that's really important, especially right now. Get close to them. This is a time to be closer. Another thing that I say too in the healing process is help children find a positive outlet to manage this. Perhaps that's volunteering if you can, making donations, praying if that's something that your family does. But let them be a part of a solution in that way so that empowers them as opposed to being helpless that this happened and I can't do anything about it.
Just a couple minutes left. I want to get to a couple more points. What if your child is showing signs of isolation or, I mean, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooters. We always talk about these shooters who are socially isolated. What if you're seeing signs in your child that, heaven forbid, are a bit alarming? Like they may hurt themselves or someone else.
Oh, well, you absolutely. First, go investigate. Because we have this thing that parents say, well, I'm going to give my kids some privacy. No, we don't. We don't do that. Because I'm responsible for you. So we're going to your rooms. We're checking out things. We're having conversations, even talking to their friends. Because sometimes friends are going to know a whole lot more than we know about our own children. So having those conversations, knowing the people that they're in contact with, super important. And if you have a concern, seek some help. But you have to have a conversation first to understand what's happening with your child.
What final advice could you give to our audience today about even something we may not have touched on that you feel that they really need to know about this?
I just think, first, the saying, parent, when you're on the airplane and the cabin pressure drops, they say put your own mask on first. There's a reason for that, because you're not in a position to help anyone if you can't breathe yourself. So in this situation, I'm encouraging parents, take care of yourself and take care of your children. You must take care of you as well in this process. Everything we just talked about, parents can do too. Sleep better, eat better, possibly talk to somebody. All of those things apply to all of us.
Dr. Shana Lewis, you always have great advice. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
And if you all would like to check out Dr. Lewis online, visit drshanadlewis.com.
Always get more advice that way too. So coming up, does a trip to the gym not work for your schedule? Should I admit it or not? Oh well. Well, we'll show